Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
All right, welcome back everyone to another edition of Simple Living High Thinking. Thank you both, Rangi and Tadeo, for joining me again. We are in chapter 2 still, so unpacking a couple of classes today, and we will have the links to those lectures in the notes online. But Tadeo, do you want to give kind of a summary of where we are and set the stage?
Yes, let's do that. So in the beginning of the second chapter, Arjun is still presenting arguments for why he shouldn't fight and how the thought of having to fight against the people he loved, the people that he honored, it's really getting the best out of him. He's in a really difficult position. He's in a really bad predicament there. Again, as Arjuna is looking across the battlefield, he encounters family members, right? People that you don't want to usually go fighting against. And that brings a torment, both physical and psychological to him. And it really brings him down, puts him in a position where he realizes that he does need guidance. He needs guidance in order to circumvent this circumstance, which is really taking the best out of him. And in that position, which isn't always so bad, right? And we have found ourselves most likely in lives where we are in a difficult corner. And in that position, to seek out guidance is good because it can allow us to grow, especially if the help we are seeking is from a bona fide source, a bona fide teacher. So that's great. And Arjuna is demonstrating that to us. In that position, he is turning to Krishna, who is the supreme person. So certainly the best person to get advice from. So in the very beginning of chapter 2, that happens. Arjuna is still very tormented, and he realizes he can't escape this predicament that he finds himself in of having to fight against people that he loves and honor. And then he turns to Krishna for guidance, which again, this really should help us in our spiritual life when things are complicated, or even if they're not. If we are lucky enough to not have to suffer in order to realize we do need guidance in our spiritual life, that's also great. But I would argue that that is the smaller cases. Most cases, the cases that we are going to find ourselves in some kind of difficult position in life, and that can be the impetus for us to seek out help and spiritual guidance. So there is good there. That suffering can be therapeutic if we make the best out of it. And Arjuna is demonstrating that here, which is he's turning for guidance. Then Krishna, and that opens up the door for this guide, in this case being Krishna, to start teaching Arjuna how to get out of the situation, how to enlighten him. And Krishna's opening arguments, it's essentially an elaboration on a philosophical thought, which is Sankhya. The word in Sanskrit is Sankhya, which the closest thing to that in our Western culture would be an ontology, which is essentially the philosophy of what exists. And we do that many different ways. Biology does that by dividing things in fauna and flora, which makes it easy when we have such a great question, what exists? It's difficult to even start. So how do we start? We start by being aware of trying to be as aware as possible of everything that is around us, and then start categorizing things in a way where that they're mutual exclusive, so that one thing will not overlap with another, and that also that everything there is included. So nothing is left out and nothing overlaps. And Krishna being so brilliant, again, let me take a step back here. How do we do that, right? Like if we ask ourselves the question, what exists? Oh, there's so much exists. There's so many sciences, there's so many political systems and psychological and biological and social and etc. So how do we even start categorizing things? It would certainly be an overwhelming task for me. Krishna, however, doesn't have that problem. So he does it very elegantly and very simply, which is again elaborating on Sankhya. That is to say that there is matter and there is spirit. It's just as brilliant, as eloquent, and as simple as that. Everything there is either matter or spirit. Those two things exist, and we cannot deny that. And outside of that, there's nothing else. So it really brings everything to light. So Krishna starts helping Arjuna by talking about Sankhya. There's matter and there's spirit. And that we are spirit. We are spirit souls. We are eternal. We never die. And therefore, trying to start to alleviate Arjuna's predicaments of thinking, I'm going to have to kill people I love. The good news here is that we are spirit souls. We are eternal. We never die. So that starts to speak to Arjuna, to have him see it in that light. So then Krishna states that point, right? So Sankhya, we are spirit and different than matter. Then progressing, Krishna and Arjuna, that goes back and forth a little bit in some texts. Arjuna is still kind of presenting some arguments, and Krishna help him navigate the situation. But then it gets to another main point of Krishna's argumentation, which is yoga, or we can say Buddhi yoga, an enlightened state of yoga. Enlightened with the knowledge that we are spirits and not matter. That is the knowledge. And now yoga. Yoga in this case, how Krishna presents to Arjuna in this section of the Gita, is the action part of this knowledge. Knowledge being, again, we are spirit, we are not matter. So now that I have this knowledge, how do I act? And Krishna then explains yoga, which is the science, which is the art, a science and an art of acting in the world and not being of it, which really means that we do our duty and we are not attached to the results. We do what we must do, and we don't think that everything depends on us and that we are the ultimate doers, because we are not. There are many other things, many other forces in our existence, in our universe, that impact the outcome of things. And we should not be so attached to how things are going to play out, as long as we do our best. We do our duty and we do our best. So Krishna talks about yoga in that sense. And an interesting point here, just as a side note, is that, just as a contextual information, that those from the Vedic perspective, a little bit of an ancient culture here, right? So from the Vedic perspective, these two parts are usually separated, meaning that people in ancient Vedic times would either be very attracted to the Sankhya path, which is really philosophical and more and inactive. The idea is that really we just think about things and we philosophize about things, but we don't act as much in the world. And the other group of people was yogis, people that were very much into acting in the world. And Krishna here, this part of Gita, he's bringing these two thoughts together, which is quite brilliant. And that, therefore he calls it the Buddhi yoga, the yoga of an enlightened person, which is that you act with knowledge that you are not the body, but the spirit, the soul within the body, but you still act in the world. So at this point in Gita, this is essentially the two main teachings that we have had. that Sankhya, there's matter, there's spirit, we are spirit and not matter. And yoga, we do our duty and we are not attached to the results. And we do both simultaneously. So that's the two main points that we have encountered so far.
Nice. Yeah, that puts it into very relatable means, like you broke it down really easily for at least me to understand. So I appreciate that. Varangi, you were saying that you found some interesting or realized some interesting relationships between Sankhya and Buddhi yoga.
Yeah, so thank you so much for such a wonderful recap of where we're at now. I guess before I start, I did want to clarify. So the yoga, it's action, right? And Sankhya is the information or the knowledge of the difference between spirit and matter. But then acting without being attached to the results, that's called Buddhi yoga, which Buddhi is enlightenment and yoga is action. So action, but with consciousness or with knowledge, right? So Buddhi yoga then becomes the union of Sankhya and yoga. Is that correct? A correct understanding?
That is correct, and is a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up, because it is not just that you act and you're not attached to the results. It should be right action, right? And right action is preceded by your intention, your internal mindset. And your internal mindset here is that I am an eternal soul and not a finite body, material body. So that Buddhi, yes, Buddhi in this case is the understanding that Sankhya will give us, that I am not material body, the body ends, I do not end, I am an eternal spirit soul. So that is the Buddhi, that is the intelligence. So now that we are acting, we must act with that in mind, and we're not, the action should also be concerned with me existing as a spiritual soul, right? Spirit soul. Because now we can say, oh, I'm going to act but not be attached to my duties. That can lead into all kinds of complications, right? Not be attached to the results. Right. Meaning, I don't care. No, like we should care. Like we are here, if anything, if we have attained the knowledge that I'm a spirit soul, now I should give that example to others. So our action should be fundamentally based on this understanding that I'm a spirit soul. And then you act in that way. And the best way of acting, if you have that understanding, is to not be attached to your results, because we are here temporarily. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really wanted to make it clear, because there are these terminologies, or these terms are being introduced for the first time. And it's so important for us to be clear on what Krishna means by them, because they will come up again. And so I appreciated that yeah, establishing what yoga means, connection, action, right? Buddhi, intelligence, enlightenment. And then Sankhya is the difference between matter and spirit, which is the most fundamental way in which we can categorize everything that we experience in this world. So thank you for that. And yeah, I was thinking that it's so important. I think it's something that on my journey, on this spiritual journey that I have been involved in for some years, it's been so helpful to realize, to get training, that knowledge of who I am, you know, as a soul. And because in a way, it's like, if you know where you're starting, it's like, it's going to become so much easier to know where I want to go, where we all want to go. Because if I'm a spiritual being, I could only, I guess, deduct that other people and other entities are also of that same nature or value, right? In a more fundamental way, not just our bodies or the outside that we are used to engaging with. And so me knowing where I'm at, who I am, and then learning this knowledge, right? that I'm different from materialism, from matter, which is very easily understood as my body, even my mind, right? Other people's skin color, likes, dislikes, nations for that matter, like where we're from, that all then takes a different value just from understanding who we are as a spiritual entity. And so I was appreciating this point of Krishna taking that, I wouldn't say step, but really coming out and just saying, hey, it's so important to know, to have that knowledge, but it's actually really important also for you to act in this world and not just simply renounce and be stuck on the theory of it. Although that is important, it is also important to practice it. And we see, at least I have experienced so much how a lot of spiritual traditions focus on either one, not both, and not in the harmonization of these two. And so what we see is people that maybe know a lot of a certain spiritual tradition or a theory, but we don't really see that they're applying these teachings into their daily lives, right? And so what's the use? What's the use of learning so much and becoming so intelligent and maybe winning a lot of awards and becoming super popular if we're not able to actually use that knowledge to act in a better way and to improve our own lives? And in doing that, we're also influencing other people and hopefully changing the world in a larger scale. And so I was really, I was feeling really grateful for the fact that, you know, Krishna is establishing the importance of acting, doing our duty. First of all, understanding who we are, and then after that, doing our duty. And Tukaram Prabhu had actually given a class recently, not a Friday night Gita class, but a class to a different group of students. And I had the honor to be the interpreter in that class. So I got to really learn a lot from hearing his just clear explanation of the point of how doing our duty and not being attached to the results is actually not that difficult if we have determination and inspiration based on the right reasons. And I thought that was so brilliant, because the question from one of the students was, well, how can we still do our duty when things are difficult? It's hard to do our duty when we don't want to do it. And so his answer was, actually, it shouldn't be hard if you understand who you are and your duty, and then so you're being inspired. It's not hard for you to love your family, right? It's not like, oh my God, I have to really try hard. Or not even your family, but somebody that you have a relationship with. You do things that maybe to other people may seem so difficult, but to you, they just come so naturally. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful point. So we can, by that information, we can measure, okay, if I'm doing something for the right reasons, and if it's based on knowledge, right, and truth, even though at the beginning it may be hard because we're not used to doing it, it's different than feeling forced to do it when we've already kind of gotten it down and we've been practicing it. So at this point of doing our duty and not being attached to the results is not something that is unnatural to do. On the other hand, it's actually very natural, because we're not from this world. We're not material beings. So what you explained actually makes so much sense. We do our part. We act with knowledge. So enlightenment action, right? And we're not attached to the results, not because we don't deserve it, or because we're bad people, or because God is selfish and he wants all the results for himself, but actually because we actually don't have any control over them. And so by worrying about them, we're just going to be in more anxiety. By worrying about them, we're going to be distracted from actually doing our duty, because we're going to be focused on manipulating other things that are beyond our control for something specific that we want, that may not even be what's best for us. And so when I heard it explained in this way, I was feeling really grateful, because it really answered a lot of my fear-based premises, you know, like, well, how am I going to be happy if I'm not supposed to enjoy the results of my action? How am I going to be happy if my duty is probably something that I don't really want to do? And so it's hearing that, no, I'm a spiritual being. Your duty is based and it comes from your nature. So I'm not going to be forced to do something that I'm not naturally good at or that I'm not naturally inclined to do. It's always going to be linked to my nature. And so when we're talking about different types of duty, which is something that Tukram Prabhu brought up, we have duties to our family members, we have duties in our work, we have duties to our nation. But overall, if we're theists, we understand that our supreme duty is to God. And so when we have that anchor, it's very easy to navigate this world, because it's just going to be in one of two categories. Does this action affect or comes in the way of me progressing in my spiritual path? If the answer is yes, then I'm not going to do it. And there's nothing hard about that. And if the answer is no, then you do it and you're inspired to do it because it's nurturing that supreme duty or that supreme goal. And so I really appreciated this point. I just wanted to share with all of you because it really makes the day-to-day actions a little easier to just step into, you know, like just understanding what the knowledge is behind it, but also how we can measure or decide what is helpful and what isn't. And really, once we have had some practice, something that's good for our spiritual life shouldn't feel so difficult and shouldn't feel so forced and so artificial. At some point, it actually has to become something that you're happy doing, that you enjoy doing. Otherwise, there's something that's missing, either from your side or you're just not understanding something properly. And I thought that was brilliant, because it's so easy to live a lot of years doing the ritual aspect of a spiritual practice or a path without really connecting in your heart. And it's so scary. That's something that I really want to stay away from. Just doing something because it looks right externally, but internally I'm not really building a real connection. And so, sorry, I'm going so long about this, but it's such a, I think something that has really transformed my own personal practice is doing something that's right because it's good for me and I understand it, the knowledge and the purpose behind it, but also then implementing it into my own life and really making it my own. And that being the only way that I can actually progress in a genuine and in an organic way, as opposed to just becoming a spiritualist externally, but internally you're not really doing any connection. And so you're left with resentments or unhappiness, or people that are super judgmental, but externally they're leaders or they're guiding other people in spiritual life, but you don't see any love or compassion coming from their own spiritual practice. So yeah, this point really spoke a lot to me. And so yeah, that's one of the points I wanted to share with you about Buddhi yoga and how that might manifest in our lives.
Thank you, Varangi. Yeah, I really appreciate you giving like the application to our lives, because sometimes these terms, at least for me, when I first read them, like renunciation and your duty, were very pie in the sky type of concepts. Like, am I supposed to renounce everything, quit my job? And what do they mean by duty? Like, what's my duty? And how do I know? Like, if you guys have insights, like you just gave great examples of, you know, how you applied it to your personal life. Tadeo, do you have any other insights as to, okay, we have these concepts of Sankhya and Buddhi yoga. What do we do with them now? Like, how do we apply it in our lives? What does that look like for you?
So personally, how I apply that is, for example, we have software that we develop and we design and for eye doctors. And it's a company that I've started and we've been working very hard at it for the past 9 years, 10 years now, actually. And it's a lot to take on. It's an industry that is very well established already. My competitors are really big companies, like multi-billion-dollar companies. And this is what I'm competing against. And in front of them, I'm like very tiny and very small. And so this is a gigantic monster for us to be better than, right? So it's a lot to take on, but we wanted to do it anyways. I have a great team of people with me in this journey. And every day is a journey, every day it's a step that I must take. And I do my absolute best. I wake up early, I do my rounds, then I meet with my team, and we do our best. We are a very small team, but we are very dedicated, we are very committed. And we have goals, we have many goals. We are ambitious, we want to be successful, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we don't meet some of the goals. Sometimes things don't go the way we planned. We have been able to achieve many of the important milestones that we have set out for ourselves, which allows us to still exist after 10 years, and we're still here. So we're doing very well. But there has been many instances where a major goal didn't come through. And I was able to go to bed and sleep at night very peacefully, and not frustrated, not irritated, not with any kind of resentments, not angry of anything, simply because I knew that not only myself, but everybody in my team, we did our absolute best. And that's it. And that is extremely helpful. Obviously, what I'm speaking about here is something quite materialistic in one sense, because I'm talking about, my job and how we make money and so on. But it is a necessity of life, right? We all must work, we all must earn money to sustain our families, and also to help spread spirituality around the world, so we can also use our income and from our so-called material jobs to spread spirituality, and in that way spiritualize something that is material by nature. So there are all kinds of reasons why I could get very disappointed. Oh, I failed. I tried to do it, but we didn't do it. We failed. Or this big business deal went to my competitor, not to me. And what would that lead? Where does that lead us? To resentment and anger. And, oh, we could have done something, lamentation. We could have done it differently. But no, I try to give this thought, this way of looking at things to everybody on my team. Like, look, what really matters is that we all do our very best. And that is internal, because we only know what is our best. We know if what we did was our 100%, and we also know if what we did in a given day was our 99% or our 10%. And oftentimes that becomes the day before, how late do we go to bed? So if we go to bed earlier and therefore being able to wake up earlier with a fresh and rested mind, it is certainly the best way for you to think and be productive. And even, the day before, you already start doing your best for the day that is to come. So are we doing all of these things, the things that we know we can do? And if we are, that's it. That's all that we need to do. And nothing else matters, whether we succeed or whether we fail. We know that we are in Krishna's hands, and that Krishna, God, cares and loves us, and we will be okay. And therefore, just that's personally, that's what I do. I do my best. And when things don't work the way I wanted them to, I'm okay. It's as if nothing really happened, good or bad. And I'm able to then, again, like I said, go to bed peacefully and sleep well.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. In today's society, stress and anxiety are just rampant, and I think for the reasons or the solutions you mentioned, people would be able to find a lot more peace and a lot more rested nights if they found some sort of philosophy or um, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, mentality that they could hold on to, that they could surrender to.
This is a huge point, you know, like being able to sleep well at night. It's a really big point because you wake up already feeling tired, already feeling under pressure, and it's just not a good setup for your day. And then from there, you're not going to have intelligence at your disposal. You're not going to have the best version of yourself. So to be peaceful, to have clarity that, you know, I've done my best and I'm not the controller, allows us to rest well, allows us to live a wholesome life, and therefore be the best version of ourselves. So much, even when it comes down to psychology, so much mistakes human beings make simply because of you're more irritated and you can't see things clear. And just a really good night of sleep could have helped with that. You wake up feeling energetic. You have the energy, you have the disposition, you have the intelligence to just go and do your best. Otherwise, you're already cranky. You wake up tired. You're already defeated before you even started. You know, your day is already done before it even starts. So that single point alone, being able to just sleep well and be rested, it is so important. And then that to me, what better than, like, how can we give a better example of not worrying about the results than at the end of your day, you did everything you could have done and did it your best. And then now you just go to bed to sleep, you know, because you're not worried. And yeah, this is a very important point.
Thank you for that. I think it's a very practical tip for those that are interested in making progress in spiritual life. And when I was hearing you explain that, and also Kim, you sharing that, I was thinking of verse 41 that we went over yesterday, which says, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. And I was thinking, you know, Krishna's talking about those that are in this path of Buddhi yoga. But even this could be applied to your material situation, like Soza Prabhu was talking about. If you have a goal in mind, you know, in your example, it's your company, and you have goals and you have a team and you guys are committed and determined, your intelligence is focused on one thing, and other things are important if they are connected to that goal. If not, then you're not so attached to pursuing them so much, and you will find a way to use all the resources around you to help you on this path to that goal. And so these teachings, you know, are not only just for your, you know, it's so easy to think, well, the Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual text, there's no way I could apply that to life. It's actually these lessons, we can apply them to any aspect of our lives, you know, even relationships. When we have our intelligence set on something that's truthful and helpful and uplifting, then the way we're going to act with those people is going to be totally different than if we're thinking of them as material beings, somebody that we can exploit, somebody that we can manipulate so we can get some benefit or enjoyment out of them. So we can really see how, and you touched on this point, how we can spiritualize anything that comes our way. And so really what the difference is our intelligence, our mentality. If we have taken the time to go deeper and to find this knowledge and get this knowledge, receive it, and get some mentoring and help from those that are advanced in this path, then we could really become masters at being in this world and connecting everything else, even if it's material stuff, to our spiritual practice. And in this way, we can become great navigators in anything we do. So we can make our job, like you said, something that will facilitate a God-conscious lifestyle. We can make our family people that will remind us of that goal. They can even start their own spiritual practice. And what's the best way to live in this world than with surrounded by people that are having the same goals in mind? It's so much easier, right? Like when you speak to your team and everybody has the same goal, it's like so easy. You don't even have to like think about like, what am I going to say today to convince them of, you know, it's just like you guys are all on point. You've gone to sleep early, you're waking up early, your whole families, like all of you are on this together because that's the goal. And so imagine really transforming everything, every sphere in your life for this one goal of self-realization. I mean, it's amazing. I know several people like that their jobs, their families, their relationships, their hobbies, everything is connected to their spiritual life. And it's not that they're feeling repressed. Actually, because they are connecting with who they are, they're so happy and they're able to do everything in like such a natural way. And in this way, inspire other people because that enthusiasm is so contagious, right? And it's so natural. You can't fake that, right? Correct. Determination and enthusiasm. And so I was thinking about this because when Tukaram mentioned it last night, how a spiritualist on this path, their mind is like an arrow. I don't think he used this word, but it's single pointed. And I was thinking, yeah, like an arrow. And in comparison, Krishna says those that are not attracted to this, their mind is like everywhere. It's like many branched. You can think of, I thought of like a tree. And it's going in so many different directions. And usually we think, oh yeah, if you can think of so many things at the same time and multitask and be focused and open to everything, then that's great. But here we hear that from Krishna, that is the opposite. It's determination and focus and commitment are actually like fundamental for you to actually make progress in this path. And so, yeah, I was reminded of this verse, and especially when we're thinking, how can we put these lessons into practice, into action? It's like, actually we can, everything is relatable to our lives. We just have to start training our minds, our intelligence to see the connection and to find ways in which we could spiritualize everything that we have, I guess, already in our lives. And so I just wanted to touch on that point. Thank you for sharing about your personal example. It was really powerful.
Well, thank you. And also, so now that I did the material one, I feel compelled to do the spiritual one, a personal example. So how do we apply this directly to our spiritual life, right? So as we mentioned in our previous podcasts, the soul is pure, and we are currently covered by our less than pure material consciousness. And so much of our spiritual journey is to purify our consciousness so that we become who we really are and have always been, which is an eternal pure soul. And now we start our spiritual journey, and we do, and let's say we're doing sincerely. So we are associating with people that know more than we do. We are humbly, from a place of humility, taking lessons from them, and we are sincerely trying to apply it all. Let's say that that is us. Certainly would be a good start. Let's say that that is the start. And then now I've been doing it for a month, let's say. A person has been doing it for 2 months, 6 months, and a year. And I still have a desire to eat meat, let's say. Or I'm still struggling with anger. Or I'm still struggling with lust or greed. And these things are still there. Which is our less than pure material consciousness covering the soul, who we really are. Well, what do we do? And how do we apply these two concepts of Sankhya and yoga to these points if we are now addressing our spiritual life, right? Well, in our practice, we do, we do four things. We chant our spiritual mantras. We don't partake in intoxications of any kind. We don't commit any illicit sex, or which is to say, sexual engagements outside of marriage. And we don't gamble. So this is the instructions we are getting from our teachers, Tukaram Prabhu as one of them. And we've been doing it for quite some time. And then now, well, but I am not a enlightened spiritualist, Buddha, Jesus-like person yet. So and then now that can start making me antsy. Well, this same concept can be applied here. Do your best, do your duty. In this case, our duty here is you chant your rounds, stay away from intoxication, stay away from meat eating, stay away from illicit sex, and just do that. And don't worry about the results. In this case, the results here meaning, hey, I'm never get angry. Even if I'm in the freeway and somebody cuts me, I'm still chill. That's not gonna happen. Somebody's gonna make you mad and you're gonna get angry. And if you have been doing this for quite some time, you're still gonna suffer the effects of lust and greed. There's a side story here where somebody was talking to one of our teachers. I forgot who the teacher was, but a very senior teacher in our path. And this devotee asked this teacher and he said, hey, I was listening to the Dalai Lama the other day on an interview. And he said that he still struggles with lust, sexual desires. And our teacher responded saying, I'm not surprised. Who doesn't? Right? That even the Dalai Lama is not above and beyond this. So again, yes, these things are still going to be there. We're still going to have greed. We're still going to have anger. We're still going to have lust. We're still going to have hate inside of us, And how do we deal with that? Just continue to do our duty. Continue to do our best. Continue to chant our rounds. Continue to do what our teachers are telling us to do, and don't be attached to these results. It will come. Krishna will help us. These desires will get out of our hearts, and we are not the doers. Again, I think I've spoke about this in the past. Coming from a culture that is very heavily surrounded around meat eating, and then me being always kind of a hungry guy because I was kind of already running around and jumping around and lifting weights and doing stuff like that. I was always very hungry and always eating a lot of this meat stuff. And it was very difficult for me to get out of it, very difficult. And then over a year. So do I just give up? Oh, I tried spiritual life. I tried to give up meat and it didn't work. So then now I just give up. No, it's not that. Continue to don't be worried about the result. You do your best. You sincerely try to not do it. But even in this very point, we must know we are not the doers. It is not us who is going to take away from ourselves the impure desires we have. It is not us. We are not doing it. It will be Krishna's mercy. Krishna will help us. And these things are going to go away from us because Krishna is taking them away, not because we are taking them away. So we don't have to feel that we are failing, that we are not progressing and be super attached to attaining those spiritual results. We simply do our duty here. We do what our teachers told us to do, and we don't be worried about the results because Krishna will take care of it.
That was really beautiful today. Varangi, did you want to add something?
I wanted to ask you both a question, just from what Tadeo was talking about. In your own experience and also what you know about our tradition, I think this is definitely something that might pop up in one of our listeners' minds, and so I definitely wanted to address it. So you spoke about 4 different things that are kind of like the don'ts in this practice. And for somebody that's, like myself, that really loves to enjoy the material world, and maybe at some point, because there's several different people that will probably be listening to this that have no experience with spiritual practice, and hasn't yet experienced any benefits from it. So specifically for that person, it might sound discouraging to hear, well, there's all these don'ts. It's like, what is the other side of those don'ts? Do we gain anything positive? Is there a benefit to staying away from these 4 things? If so, what are those? And is it only as a way to protect ourselves from engaging in these things that are sinful, or is it really because it'll help us develop other things that we may not have? So I just wanted to, I guess, ask you both, according to, you know, your own experience and what you do know, how our tradition addresses these don'ts. Are they do's that are directly connected to each of these 4 principles? And if so, could you elaborate on those?
Yeah, and that is great that you picked up on that, Varangi. Thank you very much. It is very important for us to explain deeper what these things are, so that they are not just a turnoff for somebody who is not perhaps familiar with it. And yes, absolutely, there are values to these things. And I like to answer them from a non-theistic point of view. Not to say atheistic, as if God didn't exist, but I don't want to make references to either Bhagavad Gita or our particular spiritual path to illustrate the fact that these things are objective. It is not any kind of dogma. It is not because my book says so, and therefore you should do it. But these things are quite scientific, and they're quite objective, and they're quite self-evident as well. So let's go one by one and do a thought experiment here. So no intoxication. So your question was, are there any benefits to it? And if so, then what are they? Well, all right. So how about sobriety as a benefit to your non-intoxication, the dome of, you know, don't do intoxication, right? How about sobriety as a benefit? How about thousands of people who have died in car accidents because they were driving under the influence? How about countless arguments that have started because you are in an altered state of mind due to alcohol or whatever it is, right? So then how about sobriety as a benefit? How about you sober? How about you're able to make the best decision there is to be made when the situation presents itself, as opposed to a less than ideal decision that you made because your thinking faculties were impaired due to intoxication, and you made this very poor decision that you had to live with for the rest of your life. So sobriety is itself the reward here. You're sober, you're making the right choices. We oftentimes know what needs to be done. There's a voice inside of us that guides us, that says, hey, you know, maybe you shouldn't do this. It's not so good for you. Or maybe you should do this. This is good for you. But if you are intoxicated, you're not going to listen to the right voice. You're going to do the wrong thing. It is going to be so much easier to give in to lust and hate and anger and greed when you are intoxicated than when you're sober. The voice that guides you towards the right path will speak much louder if you're sober. So sobriety itself, the opposite of intoxication itself is the reward. No illicit sex. How about love? How about true love as a reward? Because if you are a human being, which we all are, obviously those listening to this podcast, your psychology is such that you need love. We are social beings and we need love. We need somebody that we can love and somebody who can love us back. So then the question becomes, what is the best version of love, of this loving relationship? Well, you to be one that is based in commitment and honor and sincerity and truthfulness. So if you are cheating on the person who you supposedly love, how can you ever have this love? How can you ever experience the depths of love? if you are a cheater, if you can't commit to a person who is supposed to love you. If a person has said, hey, I love you, that's, you know, and if it means something, if the person is safe with sincerity, that's very powerful. This person is being vulnerable. This person is loving you. And what are you going to do? Go and engage in an illicit sex act with somebody else? That's not love. You're not going to attain, you're not going to experience what the depths of love towards another human being would be. So that would anchor you in honor, in commitments, and respect. So therefore, you don't commit illicit sex. So that would be the reward of that. The reward of no meat eating. How about peace? Because when we are eating meat, we're committing a violent act. Sorry to be so blunt. And when I first heard it, I also didn't want to think of myself as a violent person. I just didn't see it. I just didn't know it. I just didn't realize that an animal with a fully developed nerve system feels in a tremendous amounts of pain when they're being murdered. And that's pure agony. And that is unnecessary suffering and pain that I am causing to another conscious entity. Our animals are conscious entities. They are capable of feeling pain. And therefore, okay, there's an unstated premise here. I said that it is not necessary to eat animals. My unstated premise is that the whole myth behind protein, oh, I need animal protein in order to develop muscles and so on. It is a myth. I can speak for myself. I am 6'7", so I'm kind of tall. I weigh 230 pounds, down from 250 at one point. And, you know, I've been involved with sports for the majority of my life. So I do not have any lack of protein. And so it is not, we can get, this is like certainly a whole nother topic here. We're getting into nutrition, but simply the arguments that I'm going to eat an animal because I need a protein is just not a fact. So there's so many reasons why I never could truly see it, that I don't need to eat animals. The protein is not really, there are many other better sources of protein. And therefore, what is the other reason why I would eat an animal? If it's simply because it pleases my tongue, the taste of my tongue, well, then replace it like, you know, let's get creative. Let's start cooking some very nutritious vegan/vegetarian foods. You know, this culture this spiritual path that we're following, it's from India. There's a lot of Indian spices out there mixed with American cuisine or some Colombian cuisine, some Brazilian cuisine, and so on. And you can mix it all up with Indian spices and it will be delicious and nutritious. And it is not boring at all. I've been married for over a decade, and I've been saying this, I've been collecting data. There has never been more than 2 weeks that went by where I didn't eat something that I never ate before. So there's so much variety and it is delicious. So I'm completely satisfied with all the varieties that I have, even as a vegan. So there's no other arguments for why then I would participate in a industry that poses so much unnecessary suffering to an even entity, to a living entity, which are the animals. They do feel pain as we do. So again, sorry for being so blunt, but then it becomes a violent act, because if we are killing an animal, that's violent. If we are killing an animal prematurely, then that is violence. So if I engage in violence, how can I expect peace? It's counterintuitive. It defies all logic and reason. So how about peace as a reward for not eating meat, for giving up eating meat? You have peace for yourself and for those who are around you. and that it is contagious. And the people will see there's more peace in your life, and that will contaminate others. You're going to be contaminating people with peace as opposed to COVID-19, which does come from eating animals. So anyways, so peace would be the reward for not, for giving up meat eating. And gambling, it's truthfulness and determination. Because if you gamble, essentially the mentality behind that is that I want to quick money. I'm going to bypass all the sincere sacrifice that I must make. Nothing, we live in an intelligent design. It's the biggest argument against atheism. We live in an intelligent design. In this intelligent design, there are many laws. One such law is the law of karma. You're not going to get anything that you don't deserve. You're going to have to earn everything you get. So if we are gambling, essentially the mentality, if we become introspective and really search where does that come from, is that, hey, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to cheat the system. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to gamble $10 and I'm going to win $1 million. And I'm not going to put in the necessary work it takes in order to make $1 million. So we're trying to cheat something. So we gain determination to fight for the things that we want. So you become a person that are determined to earn the things that you want. And truthfulness, that you don't have to lie. You don't have to lie about the efforts you made to have something. When you start gambling, it is just one step for you to start lying about the things that you would do. If that becomes your mentality, I want to put in 10 and get $1 million, then your motivation and the things that you would do in order to accomplish that becomes a little bit questionable. It's just one step away for you to become not such an honest person. So
in every sphere of your life, right?
That is correct. In every sphere of your life. So what you gain from abstaining from the gambling mindset is truthfulness and determination. You're determined. You're not afraid of putting in hard work to acquire something that is of true value. So you're determined and you're not afraid of the work. And there are no shortcuts. If somebody does play on the lotto and they do get $1 million, that does happen. We are all aware of it. One multi-million-dollar ticket that you only pay $1 for, that does happen. But hey, that is karma. This person is getting this right now as a karmic reaction to some previous actions they did in the past. But nevertheless, the action was done. So there are no shortcuts. And the gambling mentality is that of hey, I want to take the shortcut. And I'll lie if I have to, and it will be easy. It will be easy. I'll lie my way through it. I'll get it done in this cheap way. And it is things that are of value, they're not cheap. So if you don't gamble, that means you're accepting the burden of determination. You're accepting the burden of truthfulness, and you become that person. So I hope I didn't make any mention to any scriptural text, because that was my intention, to prove that these things are self-evident, they're objective, they're rational, they're logical, they're reasonable. And therefore, those are the things we do not do in order to help us, again, take away these vices from our consciousness and become who we are, spirit souls, pure and eternal.
Thank you. Kim, do you have anything to add? Yeah, I did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was beautiful today, Prabhu. And I really appreciated the fact that you didn't use scriptural references as a personal challenge, I guess. And I thought it was much more effective that way too, to say like, here's the logic of it.
Something that attracts us all, I believe, is how non-dogmatic our path of choice is. You know, like we can scrutinize everything and see if it makes sense. Yeah, so I hope that these things did make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are running out of time, unfortunately. I wanted to end with a quote from Tukram Prabhu last night. He's been talking the last couple of weeks, he's made some really beautiful references to what it's like to be friends with a devotee, what devotees are like. In last night's class, he said, this is what, it was in relation to text 49. He said, this is what gives devotees the ability to persevere through adversity. The material world becomes powerless to stop their progress. They have an indomitable will to surrender to Krishna, to turn towards the light. So you can only let go when you know Krishna has your back. And this, to me, stood out because I come from a fear-based religion of Christianity. And this whole tradition is all about an all-good God, a loving God, and the people who walk the walk, like the devotees that I met. And so we touched on it earlier, but the perseverance of devotees and how to even wrap your mind around sticking to these 4 goals in life that we just discussed is association, like the people that you hang out with. That's, so Varangi, in answer to your question, that's how I've been able to follow those 4 goals pretty easily, is just the people that I surround myself with. Before coming to this tradition, I'd already kind of stopped all those things, but it wasn't for any real purpose, and it wasn't for any result of the joyful things today that you were referring to, like the good parts. It was more like I'm going to restrict myself from these things because I just kind of knew that they weren't good. But it's like, what was on the other end? I didn't really have that bigger yes as a motivator. So this tradition has kind of put everything together for me. So yeah, at some point in the coming episodes, I'd love for you guys to give more examples of just your experiences with devotees who have inspired you and the people in our community that keep you going strong in your personal lives. I think would really help the listeners. So just to know what we're about, that it's not just reading a text and, okay, going about our business, but actually being genuine in our lifestyle.
Sounds great.
So
Yeah, I think it's so wonderful too. What you just mentioned, community is so important, and I definitely couldn't have been around. And my whole spiritual practice is really dependent on my community and the health of my relationships with other people in my community. So I think I look forward to doing those highlights and to sharing a little more about what our community looks like and those relationships and how that plays out in our spiritual lives individually.
yeah.
Absolutely, that would be that's going to be great. And I know we're running out of time here, so I'll just mention quickly. We spoke about things we don't do. And I also mentioned that how to apply the concept of not being attached to the results of our spiritual life, which is to not be so, to take the instructions from our teachers and not be worried about when am I going to become godly, right? It will come. So the things that we do, as opposed to the things that we don't do that we just discussed, are we chant our rounds, we read our books, and we associate with devotees, which is the community that we're talking about here. So this is like it's a huge pillar of our philosophy, to the community. The association of spiritually minded people is extremely important. It is part of what we do, along with those things that we don't do. And so we chant both personally and loudly with our community, and we try to be around spiritually minded people as much as possible. So I think that's a great idea, Kim.
All right. Okay, well, that wraps up another episode. So please subscribe to our podcast and spread the word. And thank you so much for listening. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Thank you for joining us on Simple Living, High Thinking. Please subscribe as new episodes post every Monday. You can tune into this podcast live every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Check out our website for more details at simplelivinghighThinking.net. And if you would like to nominate someone for a devotee spotlight interview, contact us via our website at simplelivinghighThinking.net.
Hare